Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome to the Healthy Illness Podcast. I am your host, Kelly Marie. The Healthy Illness Podcast is all about helping you build healthier relationships while living with mental health conditions. I am a Black woman in this world living with mental health conditions, living my journey and sharing with you the tips, the tricks, the people that I have met along the way to help you be able to do the same. Our guest, we're coming in for part 2, is Sara Passamonte. She is the CEO of Compeer Rochester. Sara was born and raised in Rochester, New York, with a family of musicians. She obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology and started at Compeer as an intern and has been there over 20 years and is now their CEO. She has brought the organization through the challenges of COVID and the social justice movement and wants you to know more about why Compeer is an incredible organization for you to volunteer at, or if you're in need of services, for you to contact in your community. Okay, Sara, let's dive in. Compeer. You've been volunteering as a peer for 20 years, which is about how long you've been with Compeer, correct?
So it was a summer internship. It wasn't even a full year or anything. It was just such a little dabble in Compeer, and I basically never left. I was studying psychology. I found this program to do my summer internship. I fell in love with it. I got hired part-time, and I met these individuals through my part-time work. And this is when we were doing a little bit of peer support before it was called peer support, and I found these kids that lived in my area. They were like, 5 minutes away. I was like, well, I get matched with Joey. I was like, just give me Joey. I got Joey. He's 8 years old, and I met him, and then very quickly met his brother and sister, twins, and I just ended up kind of with the whole family. And my friends became their friends, and I worked with them pretty regularly for about 7 years. So it started out with some, skill building and a little bit more formal intervention. And then after a couple of years, we moved to volunteer base. So at that time, my partner and I would take the kids out and we'd go to the Y. They were able to qualify for scholarships for the Y. And we would just go in the pool and we would have them, play in the play area and kind of, just kind of observe and just kind of be there. And, before I knew it, these kids were 14, 15 years old, sort of backed out a little bit. We were just doing kind of holidays and birthdays together. And their grandma passed away last year. So my work with them now has become very much, like a family member. And I'm not their guardian. They don't need a guardian. They're 27, 28 years old, but just kind of being that support in their adulthood. In the meantime, I was also linked with an adult client when I was about 25, and she called me her little sister, and we've been matched ever since too. We don't see each other as much anymore, but we text every day. And so again, these people have just become part of my life. I'm not on the books anymore. We just do it. And I would have never met these families. Even the one, that lived 5 minutes away from me, I wouldn't have met them if it wasn't for Compeer.
So you said that you interned because you were majoring in psychology. So you were looking at more going into a clinical practice background. What was your goal? What was your plan at the time?
Yeah. So early 2000s, every high school graduate had to get a bachelor's degree, right? That's my generation.
Yes.
It was like, yeah, what are you going to college for? It wasn't,
Right.
I was like, I really liked helping people. And I became familiar with mental illness at a very young age because I had friends who were diagnosed in middle school with some pretty serious mental health diagnoses and medicated early on and things like that. And I just kind of got to know it more intimately than I had. And so I knew I wanted to go into the helping profession, and the logical thing for me seemed to be clinical psych. And I did that bachelor's program. And as I got towards the end of it, I was already sort of, I was looking at grad schools and I'm like, what do I want to do? Do I want to work with children? I was pretty sure I wanted to work with kids. And then I did Compeer. It was the summer before my senior year. And it just changed my whole course. It was happening sort of around the same time that I was questioning, do I want to do grad school right away? Do I want to take a year off? And everything just pointed me back to Compeer. And then I was working part-time. I got a job, almost full-time job at an after-school program, which I really enjoyed. I was working with kids. It was, still along the lines of what I thought I wanted to do, but then a full-time position opened up at Compeer to be a volunteer coordinator. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. And maybe in the back of my mind, I still thought, I'll go back to grad school eventually and I'll do this eventually. But it just became so clear to me that there was a lot that I could do in this role and that I could, sort of clone myself almost in a way by training volunteers. And, I may be only able to help these 3 kids and this one adult. But if I train 100 volunteers a year, then I've put that ripple out there.
And that's really as we now look at what contributes to a person's health and the social determinants of health and being upstream. And you were speaking and living in a very upstream way before it was a thing to be. And so similarly with volunteering at Compeer, before it became the organization that it is, you were, kind of there in, the early days. We'll call them the early days. And so what kept you there? I'm interested in learning about Sarah the person, right? Like read I don't actually read articles anymore because my brain, I just can't, but I will read headlines and then decide if I really want to read the article.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of information coming through about, folks only staying at jobs for 2 years and there's no longer, like career professionals within the space. And you don't see people staying for long periods of time anymore. And you've been here for, 20 years is nothing to sneeze at. So why Compeer? Why not, the 5-year model and bounce to a new place?
Yeah. I think there's a few things that were happening. One, I had an incredibly supportive boss that was with me like almost since the beginning. My first supervisor, that was my internship supervisor and my part-time job supervisor, he was amazing too. He left pretty soon after I was hired. I think he had only been there, maybe he did the 5-year thing, right? But there were other people at Compeer that had been there for years. There was a woman who had been with Compeer since almost like before the founder, like it was just you could see the longevity in the people. And so the culture here was and is very well suited for people like me who you want to see opportunities for growth, although I'm not going up this chain every year of, kind of meaningless promotions. I felt like every new task I was given was meaningful and was also ended up being growth for the organization. My internship supervisor let me create a program from scratch during my summer internship just to try it. And then my supervisor after that was ultimately the CEO, and she mentored me and just gave me so many opportunities. And then Compeer was changing as well, evolving. So, like, we always had this wonderful volunteer based program, but then we start doing this fee for service model. So, I'm learning about Medicaid and I'm learning about, some stuff, believe me, I never wanted to know, but learning about how we can take our services to the next level and offer this sort of the continuum of care, right? So, not just people who can benefit from a volunteer, but people who might need more support, watching the veteran program get built from the ground up, just being a part of this evolution. So I grew up here and Compeer was growing at the same time, and I just felt like it was home. And I don't know what it would have taken for me to leave, because I would say even before I had my first promotion ever, I was like, man, I think I could be a volunteer coordinator for the rest of my life. I just love this. Maybe I would have got bored with the training material eventually, but I even got to change the training material if I wanted to. So I was just given a lot of autonomy and a lot of trust, and then to see this movement grow with the rest of the world too. And I just always felt like I was part of something bigger than me. And that's kept me here. And I took over right before the pandemic. My boss had a planned retirement at the end of 2019. We had no idea what
Oh,
was coming.
wow.
So I got the job. I fought for it. I applied. It wasn't handed to me, but I got the job and I was on top of the world. I was 3 months pregnant. I was recently married. I got my dream job. And then I had to close my office for 3 months.
Oh my
Had my
gosh.
baby. Had my baby. I mean, I can't when I think back on it, I'm just like, "How did this happen? How am I still here?" It was wild, but it was wild for everybody. It was wild for everybody. Like, no one knew what they were doing except for, like, Zoom. They knew what they were doing, but no nonprofit knew what to
Seriously.
do. I felt so, I was like, here I am, here we go, and we're rolling, and we did, and I thought, like, our whole program could get shut down forever because what we
Mhm.
do is we put people together in person, and, after a few months, it was like, "Okay, we're gonna make it. It might get weird for a while," and it did, and I had maternity leave in the mix too. I mean, it was just
Now I have so many other questions. I mean, I knew that you were there right before COVID, but hearing the words in this way makes it totally different. So, how did Compeer exist during that time? Like, how did relationships work? How did matching work? Did you shutter completely for a while? Like, what
yeah.
was that like?
We closed the office down, and we were following kind of what Monroe County was doing. So we shut our administrative offices down, and we told every existing volunteer and participant, do not meet in person. We put all this stuff up on the website. We would do whatever, everything would mirror the CDC. And, if people could not be together, people could not be together. We kept vets driving vets going for a little bit because there were some riders who had medical appointments that they had to keep, like, dialysis and stuff like that. We had some diehard veteran volunteers who kept that program going until we really had to say, you guys really can't, because it's a volunteer thing. And it got, I wouldn't say any messier than what anybody else dealt with, but it was so hard because I had people that, well, from the beginning, there were people who were really nervous about the pandemic and getting sick, and some people did not care at all. So the people who were like, this is no big deal, they wanted to keep going, whether they were a client, a volunteer, whatever. And then it didn't always match up that both entities felt the same way about COVID. So
Mhm.
we just said, at Compeer's, orders, you're not meeting in person. Get on FaceTime, call, email, whatever you can do. Go to the park and, stand 6 feet apart or, like, whatever, all those things. That became a lot easier to just fall on the CDC and say, "Hey, if you guys are gonna go to a restaurant," because at some point you could go to a restaurant and you remember you put your mask on and then you sit down and take it off, like, what were
That
we
was so
doing?
strange.
But so that's kinda how it played out, and for several months, I mean, really for probably a solid 2 years, I think we were at a fully hybrid schedule for employees, so completely shut down the office for 3 months where, like, people would go in one at a time with, like, gloves and everything. We had a COVID testing site at our door because 'cause we're in a bigger building, and so one door down from us, they had people lined up for COVID testing,
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow.
well, there goes our side entrance, but we would go in, one person here, one person there just to get their stuff. I got everybody on Zoom, everybody on, laptops. Most people didn't even have laptops. And we had to do a lot. But then once we got there, it was like, oh, this is kind of nice. Well, I was also in my third trimester. You have to remember this. So I was working home from sweatpants and I was also okay with that. But yeah, that whole bounce back period was very slow, very, very slow, and still giving people a lot of directives about, what they should be doing when they're together, what not to do. We were doing, staff health checks every single day. And we were treated as a healthcare organization because of our funding. So we really had
Oh,
to
wow.
we had masks on in the office until I think
Okay.
September of 2022. I mean,
Wow,
it was
yeah.
just it was a lot. But certain things were I remember very, very vividly back in, like, April of 2020, the news wanted me all the time. They were like, "Talk about Compeer and mental health." They were looking for these bright spots and just wanted to
Mhm.
pay attention that people were starting to suffer that had never suffered like that before. People who had never had a mental illness suddenly started
Yes.
having symptoms. And I just remember so many people wanted to volunteer. So many people wanted to help. They didn't know where to put all this energy. And
Mhm.
it kind of helped us because it got the name out there. But then there were things like people would get started volunteering virtually, but then they could never convert it to in person, or
Mm.
they would get started because they were laid off, but then they went back to work. So our retention wasn't as good back then. But man, did we have the spotlight for a while. We're like, oh, people are starting to understand what it feels like to have a
Yes.
mental health issue. People are starting
Yes.
to understand how important it is to have friends,
Yes.
So
I remember people calling and texting like, is this what this is actually like, Kelly?" welcome to the party. Yes,
Yeah.
this is what anxiety and depression is really. Yes, this is it. This is it, guys.
I ran into my best friend at a grocery store. I was 9 months I was about to have my baby, and I ran into my best friend at the grocery store, we're masked or whatever. I wasn't even doing a lot of the grocery shopping. My mom was, like, bringing groceries and wiping them down, like, that was the level we were at. But I ran into her, and we just held each other for, like, 5 minutes. I was just like, because we weren't making plans, so it didn't feel right to make plans, and my whole baby shower was, like, virtual, people drop stuff off on my door, you know? It was like it was just bananas.
And we quickly forget how wild it really was.
Yeah.
And now that life is this new place of normal, the wiping down of groceries, and I worked at ECMC, so taking off clothes as soon as you got in the house, and people forget. I mean, we all lived through it, but it doesn't really cross my mind. Well, until somebody start coughing now,
Mhm. You're like, "Oh."
especially that wet cough.
Oh, yeah.
So that still kind of sticks with me,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's like the brain is like, all right, we're just going to box that all up. It didn't happen.
Yep.
And I've even like tried to watch some TV shows that have covered that period.
Yeah.
That's when like the anxiety kicks in and I'm bawling and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
there's some things here that I didn't know existed. Let me go watch some cartoons because I can't. But I'm just, happy that and grateful that Compeer was able to make it through that period because so many organizations were not. And that you're still here being able to provide companionship to folks who are trying to live their healthiest life.
Yes.
What do you do for you? Like, what's your self care? How do you take care of you so you can show up for your family and everybody else in the world?
Yeah, so after, a couple years in the leadership role and the pandemic, I also went through a divorce, which was horrific, and, with a small child, so my child is 5. And life gets really stressful. I'm running a company. I'm one person. I am a mom. I'm a sister. I have 4 younger brothers, so I have a lot on my shoulders all the time. I take it in stride. I take every day one day at a time, and to take care of myself, I do a lot of fun stuff with friends. I just went to 2 concerts last week. I don't take long vacations right now because it's hard with, my child being young and, again, one person, but I will easily take a 3-day weekend, and I listen to music. I'm in a band, so I am a singer, and I have a weekly, jam rehearsal session, even if we don't have a show coming up, but we do some shows. And I can pick up the phone any night and call, one of my close friends, my mom, my dad. They're huge supports to me. I'm so lucky that they're healthy. They're still taking care of me more than I think I'm taking care of them for sure. Yeah. And then I just, come into work. We have a nice small office with a great inclusive team that, people just feel for each other. And I've had some people with me here for easy 5, 10, some I think 15 years aside from me is the longest running person. So we're close. We're very close. So I have my music and I have my outings with friends. I do some yoga. I don't do as much of that as I'd like to, but love yoga, anything to do with, meditation. And I'm not a church goer, but very spiritual and try to reach those practices, in ways that I can through meditation and things like that. And a little bit of audible. I just, it's like I find the time and I just do it.
Make it happen. I think you're an incredible person, ma'am. I just want to say,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the platform. I think you're amazing for doing this and just getting to know people and giving these voices out because I just had to look up some podcast last night dealing with my daughter. I'm like, why isn't my child listening?
yes,
Like, God bless the podcasters. For real. For real.
because the struggle is real. And, until you're in it, whatever it may be, right? It's different for every single person, but it's real. It's real. My kids are all adults. One is in the Navy and is leaving soon, so will be a veteran, and I hope he will, get connected.
Oh, that'd be
Want all the kids to stay, focused on their mental health. And if that means that we're close, great. If that means we're not, great. Like, I accept if I was a bad parent, like whatever, however I can be, for them and for those that I love and care about. I want to be able to do that while also taking care of myself.
of course.
Right.
Mhm.
But I just want to say thank you so much for you being you and showing up in the way that you do and making sure that Compeer is there for those of us in need. So how can folks get in touch with Compeer? There were two websites you gave us, one for Compeer Rochester and one for Compeer National. What were those again?
CompeerRochester.org will give you all the Rochester programs, and then Compeer.org will give you the international perspective where you can find the affiliates. Yeah.
Incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for the next episode, to be honest, I have no idea what that's going to be, but like, subscribe, and share. You tell everybody you know about this episode with Sara Passamonte, the CEO of Compeer. She is also a singer in a band. Like, people wear many hats doing the work that they do. Sara, thank you so much for joining me. And until the next time, all of you, be the light.